Hey, what's up? It's Kev here with my friend Joshua Lee Henry. What's up, Joshua?
Hey, how you doing, Kev?
Good, brother. It's good to have you here. I appreciate you coming on. We were just talking about you were in Real Free Life RFL 8.
Eight.
Yep,
Yeah.
an 8. And man, you and I have been working together quite a bit since then. We've worked on several projects together. You're an ambassador and copy chief, which thank you so much for all you give in there.
Sure.
I'm always happy to send leads your way because I know your bat signals and you may have even more than I know. But let's talk about bat signals because I know some people are still not quite sure. Like, what do I do? One big thing people get hung up on. So, a bat signal is your specialty, and it's a way to define your specialty. And what we say, like, we want to train our best prospects to shine our bat signal when they need our help on our specialty, right? But a thing that people get hung up on, Joshua, as you saw in RFL with other students, is they feel like, oh, once I choose this, there's no going back, or this is going to be define me forever. But you have multiple bat signals. Talk about that and talk about how you use them.
Yeah, I love it. I commented in the thread the other day that, the way I look at bat signals is that they're part, unique selling proposition, part USP, part elevator pitch, and part headline. And so the way I come at it is that there's a person with a problem that I solve on a particular platform. And so those kind of three pieces, for me, my bat signal where I'm at in my business right now is that I do long form, front end client acquisition pieces. And these are either VSLs or long form sales letters. So that's like the problem, the front end client acquisition piece. It's long form, and the platform is either in video through a VSL or through a long form sales page. So these are 12, 10, 12, 15, 20,000 words sometimes. And my who, the person that I solve that problem for, is really kind of three distinct groups. They're overlapping. The psychographic and the demographic personalities and characteristics are very similar, but they are different. The first one is financial publishers, and so your companies like Agora, Malden Economics, Angel Investing, these different publishers that we have a relationship with. I write front end pieces for them. The second group would be real estate investors, and so very similar market there. But people that, gurus and editors that teach ways to invest in real estate, whether that's apartments, whether that's, private money brokering, whether that's duplexes, multifamily housing units, things like that. The third group that I talk to are what I call biz op and biz growth. So it's going to be people with, make money strategies that combine, motivation, mindset, along with some kind of proven marketing system or business system. To make money. And so when you look at the demographic of that person, it's all some kind of an opportunity buyer, somebody that wants to, get ahead, that's has a little bit of a gambler's psyche. They're looking for a magic wand. They're looking for ways to supplement income. They're looking for ways maybe to subsidize their retirement. A lot of that audience tends to be, boomer white male, either white collar or some kind of professional degree. Middle age, so those people are the people I talk to, and I love it. And it's funny because I know people like that. I've got people in my family like that. I've got neighbors like that. When I sit down and write a front end VSL, I visualize, my father-in-law, I visualize my neighbor, I visualize my uncle, these guys that I know that fit that demographic. And so that, I think that's what helps me talk to them,
I love that you know the avatar really well. But you see how they cross over to different markets, different niches. It's funny. I love that. As you were going through that, I just wrote down someone else I need to connect you with.
Oh, good.
And
Yeah.
again, and that's the power of a bat signal. Like, it's like the minute you said about the real estate investing, I was like, oh, I didn't connect him to Cindy, like that needs to happen now. Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's, I love that. I mean, you've done I don't know, you're very bright and I don't know, you're very organized, it seems to me, in your thinking. And that's why I think this has come easy to you. It's effective for everybody, but I just love that you sort of don't overthink it. You decided the important thing, which is like, because, people say when you specialize, picking a niche is not enough, right? You just ripped off several niches, but you still know who you're writing to in each of those sort of proposals.
The crazy thing is when I talk to people, I talk to like who I've worked with or clients or, I'm talking to family members or friends, it sounds very scattered, but it really isn't. I do the exact same thing. And I do it for the exact same person. The end user for all three of those niches, they're so similar. And so what I do is I do front end, long form customer acquisition pieces. And so even with my own offers and things, that's what I do. When I'm working with, companies on a rev share or a royalty basis, that's what I do. And I don't deviate outside of that. So I'm
Yeah.
very specific in who I talk
Yeah.
to and how I talk to them. It's just some of that messaging, that copy,
Yeah.
that changes specific to the niche or the industry.
That's so critical what you said about, what you do and then you don't compromise away from that. Man, that's another thing that is a mark of moving into that important, fourth stage and into the fifth stage phase of the freelancer's journey, right? Where you're stabilizing your business and then you're systematizing and, accelerating things. You cannot stabilize your business unless you know what you don't do as much as what you do, right? And so people say so stuck in like phase 3 because they're just taking whatever comes and they feel like they're at the mercy of whatever leads come their way from whatever means, and instead of having control over it.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. That's the thing. I mean, all the different metaphors for focus, whether it's a laser beam or a sniper rifle or a magnifying glass, whatever the case is, you really have, I love that acronym, it's, FOCUS, follow one course until successful. You gotta focus like that. And so now when I get leads or referrals or I see something posted in the job boards and the threads, I'll pass it on to somebody if it doesn't fit within my boundaries, because I know where I'm effective at. And if I'm not effective, it's going to be a waste of my time. It's going to be a waste of my opportunity, the opportunity cost there. I may or may not get the results I'm used to, for clients. I do not perform well. It's like one of my favorite authors is a guy named Peter Drucker. They call him the father of modern management. And he says that whenever you see something effective being done, it's being accomplished by a monomaniac on a mission. A monomaniac, somebody that's singularly focused on an objective. They're on a mission to complete it. They're not going to stop until it's done. Follow one course until successful. And so when I get, when people are saying you're doing this in real estate, you're doing this with, Agora, you're doing this with, so-and-so, personal development, I'm like, it looks that way to you from the outside. But if you see it from my perspective, it's like a tunnel. It's like a railroad track. I'm doing the same thing in these different areas, but they're really pointing towards the same destination. And I'm sorry if I'm confusing too many metaphors, but
no, it's great. I'm the same way. I love acronyms and things. They just help me remember stuff, and they're effective. I like that. That's great, man. So that's how you've kind of answered a few of the questions I like to ask people when we're talking about their experience in RFL, because it is about specializing. It is about using that bat signal. And clearly this is the thing that you took from RFL. One of the things that you continue to build on and use effectively all the time. Was there something else beyond bat signals? Obviously there's a lot in the course, but is there anything else you keep handy? You never want to be without when you're out there building your business every day?
There's so much, Kevin. We were talking earlier that the 7 phases of the freelancer journey, that timeline, that evolution, going from learning the craft, improving the model to, stabilizing your business and becoming an expert, having your own offers, your own products, that overlapped with the three paths, the path 1, path 2, path 3.
Yes.
I just kind of overlap those together because, that determines what your 7-phase freelancer journey is going to look like. That end destination is different for everybody. So that's definitely one. The other thing that I just have beat into my head is authority content. I'm constantly putting out authority content. And again, you have to pick a platform for that. And so for me, I like to do written stuff, and I do video. I do a lot of video, and I'm very strategic in where I place that content. I'm big in letting people see what I want them to see, if that makes sense. Like I
Mm-hmm.
know where my target pools are and I fish in those pools. So I don't try to be everywhere. There are a lot of things I don't do. I'm not super active on social media. It's very niche specific to where my audience is. But
Yeah.
I create authority content for those places. And so thinking of yourself as a publisher, as a
Yeah.
ABC or CNN or TBS or whatever these networks are producing content, constantly
Right.
producing content, because Laura Belgray said at Copy Chief Live, it pays to be prolific. When I look
Right.
at the books behind me, guys like Peter Drucker, John Maxwell, Brian Tracy, Dan Kennedy, even from the ministry background, I used to be a pastor, John Wesley. These people, we know their names because we know their work. There's a
Right.
body of work that they've published, that they've produced, because that's going to outlast anybody's life. You know what I mean?
That's a
I mean,
really good
Dan
point. Yeah.
Kennedy, he's been in this for like 40 years. He's got like, 100 books or whatever. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, pick your guru. It's like they stay in front of you on purpose. They're
That's right.
constantly adding value. They're constantly creating content. And so that authority content that positions you, that portrays your message that you want to get across to your audience, I'm constantly doing that, man.
That's great. Yeah. And, I always say that there's two parts to authority content that make it effective. One is the obvious thing, which is it's a way to advertise your business, let people know who you are, what are your bat signals, when should they shine them. Yeah. But the other one is what it does for you. And, going back to that acronym, whose acronym is that, the focus one? Do you know?
I've heard it from Brian Tracy. I've heard it from a number of people. I don't know who created. I think it's actually a military thing. I think it actually came from the Navy.
So, point being, when you come up with an acronym or do a thing like that, like, that's a way to stay in front. Like, there's certain lessons I've been taught that I know exactly who taught them to me. It's even better if it was one-on-one, like a Dean Jackson or James Schramko or John Carlton for me, right? But so much of it came through books. I've never met Mike Michalowicz. That guy has changed my business probably created the biggest shifts in some ways in my business since I've had it up and running,
Yeah.
And so I don't, and I was telling somebody the other day, when it comes to a guy like Michalowicz, it's like, I don't need him talking to me every day, right? But sometimes you do. Like, the more embedded I get with him, the more I'm going to do with him. But he's already done enough. Every time he puts out a book, I'm buying it. I'm pre-ordering it. I'm reading that book, right? Immediately. I know it's going to be impactful for me. Here's the thing, though, because he's producing content, and he considers, by the way, his number one job, his queen bee. If you've read Clockwork, his queen bee role is to produce the books, write great books, and get on stages and present, because he says, I'm kind of the only one who can do that. And that's the thing that's going to drive the company forward. And, but it's because he's always having to come up with the material for podcasts, for stage presentations, knowing the next book is coming. He's sort of, remember the Gary Halbert thing of the looping, right? I think of it as like full-time looping on ideas and refining things. And for me, like, saying those things out loud to people and seeing what kind of feedback I get in a video, on a post, whatever it is, that's how we're constantly refining our ideas. And the process will allow the ideas to decide which ones get acted upon and refined and made into the next book. And that's how the cycle just continues.
Let me tell you something. This is going kind of deep here, but you do this, Mike does this, Dean Jackson does this, Kennedy does this, Halbert did it, Carlton, everybody. And few marketing people talk about this that I'm aware of right now. There's a handful, but all of those guys, yourself included, Kevin, and me, we create language. And, I'm big in studying cultures, tribes, cults, brands, things. They create language. And when you create language, you create a community, you create belonging, you create this insider knowledge and this information. Going back to Mike's books, I interacted with him 7-8 years ago, and he wrote his book, The Pumpkin Plan. He's got another book called The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur. He's got the Clockwork book. He's got a whole bunch of these different books. And he comes up with these different analogies and these metaphors that create word pictures. It's the same thing with Dean Jackson, like the 9-word email. It's like it's something that he's coined. that he has, you know, for all intents and purposes, you know, trademarked. Like when you talk about 9-word emails, you know, that's Dean Jackson. When you
Yep.
talk about authority content, bat signal talent, RFL, you know, these are all 60-second sales hook. These are all terms that you've created out of your content machine, your brain, your experience. You've created these things and people identify with them now. It's the same thing with Dan Kennedy and No BS. They become
Right.
part of your brand. They become part of your habeas corpus, your body of work. You know what I mean? They become part of your
Yeah.
identity and how people know you. And
Yeah.
so that's what's critical. And you don't get that stuff unless you're constantly
Right.
always producing new content.
That's
It's just like
100%.
any musician or whoever, you know what I mean? If
I
you're
was going to
always
say,
putting
you know,
out.
yeah, I like to think of it as stage time because
Yep.
from my comedy backgrounds, like you cannot develop a joke on paper.
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't. You can refine it as much as possible. You might nail it. The first idea comes out of your head onto the page, out of your mouth into the audience, and you're like, that joke's done. That's fantastic. But most times, it's going to be the 10th time you do the bit, or the
Yep.
7th, or you know, different audiences. You could do the same joke on the 8 o'clock show, and they stare you down, and then the 10:30 show, they think you're a genius. They want to. It's you know, but so it takes that iteration process to
Yes.
refine an idea. And that's how, I don't know who said it, but it's, you know, that's a rule in any writing. About 10% is your best stuff. You got to write the other 90% to get to the 10%.
Exactly. Exactly. I love it. It's the throat clearing.
Throat clearing. Yeah, it's exactly. And yeah, you know, the other thing, it was one more cliche for the
Yeah.
record here. Writing is rewriting, and that's kind of what it is, right? You know, the first thing you write is the idea, and maybe it got good to you, and maybe you knocked out a killer piece in the first draft. But with what we do as professional writers, especially persuaders, it's got to be the rewriting. It's going to be 7, 8, 9, 10th draft. Remember, I don't know if you were at the first Copy Chief Live, Marcella Allison gave out a file, a Word document with the 200 drafts of a sales letter. 200 drafts of a sales letter before it went live. I mean, so I love it. Joshua, man, thank you for spending this time. So much you and I could talk about. You always impress me, dude. Like you're just doing great things. You're humble. You're very wise, and you're a great leader, man. I really appreciate everything you do for the members of Copy Chief, and I just love knowing you and working with you, man.
Glad to be a part of it, Kevin.
Thank you, brother. We'll talk soon.
Yep.